The morning sun stretched across the rolling acres of Jack Tanner's ranch, painting the fields in gold. The land was quiet, steady, the kind of silence Jack had fought for overseas but never truly found until he came home. Here, he and his wife Sarah carved out a life. A life away from noise, away from orders, away from war. Jack stepped off the porch, boots crunching against gravel, when he noticed the envelope tucked under the gatepost. White. Stamped. Official. His jaw tightened. Another notice. He didn't have to open it to know what it said. Behind him, Sarah appeared with a coffee mug in each hand. She wore that calm smile, the one that steadied him even when the world shook. She handed him the cup, her fingers brushing his calloused knuckles. Another one? Jack tore the envelope. Read the words. Fines. Violations. Threats of foreclosure. Same script, different day. His voice was low. Controlled. Karen. Sarah's smile thinned. Everyone in the valley knew the name. Karen Pollson, president of the Homeowners Association. A woman who treated bylaws like scripture and power like oxygen. To her, Jack's ranch wasn't just a piece of land. It was a trophy she hadn't claimed yet. Frank's behind this too, Sarah said softly. She met Karen's husband. A lawyer with more connections than morals. If Karen was the spear, Frank was the hand that drove it. Jack folded the paper once, then again, sliding it into his back pocket. His eyes scanned the horizon, the fence line, the barn, the oak tree that had stood longer than any Pollson had lived here. This was his ground. He wasn't about to let some HOA bully him off it. Let her send her letters, Jack muttered. Paper can't break a man. But even as he said it, Sarah could hear the edge in his tone. She'd seen that look before, years ago, when soldiers whispered about ambushes before they happened. Jack Tanner wasn't just irritated. He was bracing. A truck rolled slowly past on the road, too slow to be casual. Jack's eyes narrowed. He clocked the driver, a man he didn't recognize, bald, tattoos running up his neck. The truck lingered, then rumbled on. Sarah caught his glance. Neighbors? Jack shook his head. No. That's something else. The wind carried the sound of a crow overhead. A bad omen, maybe. Or just another day in the valley. Jack set his mug on the porch rail, his stance rigid now. The HOA had drawn first blood with their letters, but Jack Tanner knew letters were only the beginning. He'd fought men with guns, knives, and bombs. He'd fought in deserts and cities and places that burned the soul out of soldiers. And now, it looked like he was going to have to fight for the one thing that ever gave him peace. His ranch. The rumble came first. Low. Heavy. A sound that crawled across the valley floor like thunder. Jack was in the barn, tightening the bolts on the old tractor, when Sarah stepped in, her voice tense. You hear that? He did. Harleys. More than one. By the time Jack walked out, a line of motorcycles was snaking up the dirt road to the ranch. Dust rose behind them, clouding the morning sun. There were 6 of them, maybe 7, leather vests, tattoos, steel-toed boots, eyes hidden behind black shades. The kind of men who didn't ride for scenery. The leader, a broad man with a shaved head and a scar curling from ear to jaw, killed his engine right at the gate. One by one, the others followed. The valley went quiet except for the ticking of cooling engines. Sarah stood at the porch, mug still in hand, though Jack could see the way her fingers gripped it. The scarred man swung a leg over his bike and grinned at Jack. It wasn't friendly. You Tanner? Jack didn't answer right away. He let silence settle, let the man feel the weight of it. Then, depends who's asking. The biker chuckled, motioning to the ranch behind Jack. Nice spread. Shame if it changed hands. Another biker snorted. Yeah. HOA's been saying you're out of line, soldier boy. Maybe it's time to cut your losses. Jack didn't flinch at the word. Soldier. They always brought it up, as if they thought it meant broken, unstable. He met the leader's gaze, steady and flat. This ranch isn't for sale. Scarface took a slow step closer, his boots crunching gravel. That's the wrong answer. He leaned in, voice dropping low. Some powerful people want this land. Best thing you can do? Take the money, walk away. Otherwise, he tilted his head toward the others, who smirked like wolves. Things get rough. Behind Jack, Sarah spoke. Calm. Controlled. You're trespassing. The leader glanced at her, smirk widening. Sweetheart, this is just a friendly visit. Jack moved then. Quick. Deliberate. He stepped between Sarah and the bikers, his frame a wall. His voice came out calm, but edged in steel. You had your visit. Now leave. Scarface's grin faltered for half a breath. He wasn't used to men who didn't blink. He gave a sharp whistle, and the bikers revved their engines, the roar splitting the valley air. Threats in noise, in vibration, in fuel and smoke. Jack didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just stood there, shoulders squared, eyes locked. After a long moment, Scarface spat into the dirt. This ain't over, Tanner. You'll wish you'd listened. He kicked his bike to life, engines roaring again. One by one, the gang wheeled around and thundered back down the dirt road, leaving only dust and silence in their wake. Sarah exhaled, steady but shaken. They're not bikers. They're messengers. Jack's jaw tightened as he watched the dust fade. No, he said. They're a warning. And warnings, Jack Tanner knew, were always followed by war. 2 days passed before the next strike came. Jack found it waiting on the porch in a neat, manila envelope stamped with the Pollson's law firm insignia. This wasn't the usual HOA fine or violation. It was thicker. Heavier. Sarah sat across the kitchen table as he slit it open with a knife. The sound of paper tearing felt too sharp in the quiet house. He unfolded the first page, scanned the language. His jaw flexed. Notice of foreclosure proceedings. Failure to comply with community standards. Lien against property filed by the HOA. Sarah leaned in. Her eyes darted over the legal jargon. They can't do this. They think they can, Jack muttered. He flipped the page, then another, each one dripping with threats written in lawyer's ink. His voice was low, but she could hear the weight pressing behind it. This isn't Karen anymore. This is Frank. Frank Pollson. The man who turned rules into shackles. If Karen was the mouth of the beast, Frank was the spine. He drafted these papers himself. Jack could feel the precision of it, the traps laid in every line. This is harassment, Sarah said, her EMT comm slipping into anger. It's fraud. We can fight it. Jack shook his head slowly, eyes narrowing at the words. No. This isn't about rules. They want the land. The phone rang. Jack answered, but the voice on the other end wasn't a neighbor. It was clipped. Confident. Male. Mr. Tanner, the voice drawled, you've got 2 options. Sell, or lose everything. The HOA has deep pockets and deeper patience. Men like you don't last in court. Jack didn't respond. He just listened to the silence on the line after the threat. Then he hung up. Sarah's eyes were on him. That wasn't Karen, was it? No, he slid the phone onto the table. Frank. They sat in silence for a moment, the papers spread out like battle maps. Jack had fought wars before, wars where bullets tore the air and explosions turned earth to fire. But this was a different battlefield. Paper and ink instead of steel and lead. Still, the goal was the same, to break him. Sarah reached across the table, laying her hand over his. They're trying to box us in. Legally. Financially. And when that doesn't work, they'll send more muscle. Jack looked at her, then at the ranch through the kitchen window, the fields, the barn, the oak. His jaw tightened. They declared war, he said quietly. And in Jack Tanner's life, war was something he never lost. The attack didn't come at dawn, or at night. It came in the middle of the day, when the sun hung heavy and the cicadas screamed in the trees. Jack was repairing the south fence line when he noticed it, the shimmer of glass in the field, sunlight flashing off a scope. He froze. Slow inhale. Slow exhale. His instincts, honed in sand and jungle, never lied. He ducked behind a fence post just as the first shot cracked, splintering wood inches from his head. "Jack!" Sarah's voice echoed from the porch. She'd seen him dive. Inside, he barked, but she was already moving, not away, but toward the barn. Toward the shotgun. 3 figures emerged from the tree line, advancing across the field with precision that didn't belong to bikers. Tactical vests. Carbines. Ball caps pulled low. Professionals. Mercenaries. Jack dropped low, sliding through the dirt to the shadow of the tractor. The smell of diesel and hot metal filled his lungs as he scanned their movement. They weren't here to scare him. They were here to take him out. One lifted his rifle, sweeping the porch. Jack's heart slammed. "Sarah!" A blast rang out, not theirs. Sarah stepped from the barn, braced against the doorframe, the old pump-action shotgun kicking smoke. The lead merc dropped, clutching his leg. The other 2 fanned wide, barking orders. Jack saw their formation, their angles. He knew this dance. He'd led it once. He grabbed a rusted spade from the dirt, hurled it. It clanged off a merc's rifle, throwing his aim. Jack lunged, closing the distance in a blur. His fist caught the man's throat, dropping him gasping to the dirt. Jack rolled, grabbed the fallen carbine, and came up firing a burst into the ground near the last man's boots. "Back off," he roared. The final merc froze, eyes darting from Jack's stance to Sarah's steady aim from the barn. He wasn't paid enough for this. With a curse, he dragged his wounded partner up and staggered toward the trees, leaving the third man writhing in the dust. Silence fell, broken only by Sarah's ragged breathing. Jack strode to the wounded merc, yanked him up by the vest, and slammed him against the fence. "Who sent you?" The man spat blood, lips curling. "You already know." Jack's grip tightened. His voice dropped, low and dangerous. "Say it." The merc's eyes flicked, just for a second, toward the Pollson's estate across the valley. That was enough. Jack shoved him down, letting the man crawl away after his partners. Sarah lowered the shotgun, her hands trembling only after the danger passed. "They won't stop." Jack watched the tree line, every nerve humming. "No. They won't." He looked at the horizon, at the Pollson's mansion gleaming white against the hills. "This isn't harassment anymore," he said quietly. "It's war for the land." The house was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. Every creak of the wood, every hum of the fridge carried tension. Sarah cleared the dining table, sliding the unopened bills and old magazines into a pile. In their place, she spread a county survey map, the kind used by developers and contractors. Red pen marks dotted the parcels, but her hand hovered over their land. Jack stood at the window, scanning the fields with the same vigilance he once used in combat zones. His mind replayed the ambush, the scope flash, the way the mercs moved, the look in their eyes. They weren't weekend thugs. They'd been trained. Paid well. "They're not going to stop," Sarah said, breaking the silence. "No," Jack answered. "They won't. Not until they get what they're after." Sarah leaned over the map. "But what is that?" "No one fights this hard for HOA rules." Jack turned. His eyes went to the stack of files Sarah had pulled from the county office. She'd been digging since the first find came in, her EMT comm channeling into research instead of panic. "These," she said, sliding one folder open. "Zoning requests. Property tax assessments. Someone's been filing under shell companies, buying up land all around us." Jack scanned the documents. Different names. Different LLCs. But the same legal counsel stamped at the bottom of every page. Frank Pollson. They're consolidating, Jack muttered. Piece by piece. Sarah tapped the corner of the map. And look here. Geological survey reports. No reason the HOA should care about these. Unless. She stopped. Her eyes flicked up to him. Unless what? Unless there's something under the land. Jack leaned over, scanning the charts. Soil density reports. Subsurface readings. Not just farming data. Energy company reports. And then he saw it, a notation buried in fine print. Hydrocarbon presence detected. Oil. Jack straightened, the weight of it settling in. This wasn't about grass height or paint color. It wasn't even about pushing him off the ranch for control. The Pollsons wanted what was buried deep below it. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. They're using the HOA as cover. Jack exhaled slowly. The pieces fit too clean. Frank in the law office. Karen with her mouth in every meeting. Mercenaries on retainer. All of it fueled by the promise of black gold under his soil. He pulled a notepad from the drawer, flipped it open. Then we fight on two fronts. Legal and tactical. Sarah tilted her head. Legal? You build the case. Paper trail, survey data, every violation of power you can pin on them. Jack's eyes were hard. I'll handle the other. Sarah studied him, seeing the soldier flicker back to life in his movements. Jack! But he was already moving, checking the locks, taking inventory of the shotgun, the old hunting rifles, even the bow hanging in the barn. Sarah looked at the map, then back at him. For the first time, fear wasn't in her voice. They picked the wrong family. Jack paused at the doorway, eyes on the Pollson's mansion across the valley. They picked a fight they can't win. Night draped the valley in silence, broken only by the occasional bark of a coyote. From the porch, the Pollson's mansion glowed like a lantern in the dark, white walls lit by floodlights, the faint outline of motion sensors dotting the grounds. Jack crouched in the barn, black shirt, face streaked with mud, gear laid out on a tarp. Not weapons, not tonight. Just tools. Binoculars. A digital recorder. A lockpick set that hadn't seen daylight since his army days. Sarah watched him from the doorway, arms folded. You sure about this? He checked the recorder's battery. I'm not going in for a fight. Just eyes and ears. She frowned. That's what you said before half the world's firefights. Jack gave a thin smile but didn't argue. He slipped into the shadows, moving through the tall grass like he was back on recon patrol. Every step was measured, every pause intentional. The years hadn't dulled his instincts. The Pollson's property sat like a fortress, but arrogance made people sloppy. He found a gap in the cameras, a blind spot between the garage and the hedge line. From there, he crawled low until he reached the utility shed. Voices carried through the night. He stilled, focusing. Shipment comes in Friday. They'll never know what hit him. It was a man's voice. Not Frank Pollson. Someone else. Another merc, maybe a contractor. Another voice replied, female, sharp, commanding. Jack's chest tightened. Karen Pollson. We need the last parcel. The Hendersons won't sell, but they will when the bank calls in their note. And the veterans? They'll fold or burn. Either way, we win. Jack's jaw flexed. He leaned closer, pressing the recorder against the thin wood of the shed. Every word etched itself into digital memory. Karen continued, voice thick with disdain. Jack thinks this is about grass and fences. He doesn't see the bigger game. By the time he does, he'll be a ruin we sweep aside. A laugh followed. Cruel. Confident. Jack's pulse stayed calm, steady, soldier calm. He had what he needed. Proof. A thread to pull. But then came the scrape of boots on gravel. A flashlight beam cut the dark. Patrol, 2 o'clock, Jack muttered under his breath. He slid back into the grass, moving slow, low, like water finding a crack. The beam swept the ground inches from his boots. A merc paused, listening. Jack didn't breathe. Didn't blink. The silence stretched razor thin. Finally, the beam swung away. The merc cursed under his breath and moved on. Jack slipped into the night, vanishing between the trees until his own land's fence line cradled him in safety. When he returned, Sarah was waiting on the porch, shotgun in her lap. He handed her the recorder. Her eyes widened as Karen's voice hissed through the speaker. Jack sat beside her, gaze locked on the mansion lights across the valley. "We've got them talking," he said quietly. "Now we build the trap." The kitchen table had become their war room. The recorder sat in the center, its tiny speaker filling the air with Karen Pollson's venomous voice. "The veterans? They'll fold or burn. Either way, we win." Sarah's hand trembled as she stopped the playback. Not with fear, but with purpose. "This is enough," she said. "This isn't just HOA harassment anymore. This is fraud, conspiracy." She paused, her eyes narrowing. "Organized crime." Jack leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Evidence doesn't matter if the whole county's in their pocket." Sarah shook her head. "Not everyone. We just need the right person." By morning, she knew who. Judge Linda Martinez. Fair, no nonsense, a woman who'd gone toe-to-toe with developers before. Sarah packed the files, the survey maps, and the recorder into a battered leather satchel and kissed Jack on the cheek. "Don't get shot while I'm gone." Jack gave a humorless smile. "Don't get bought while you're there." The drive into town was a battle of its own. Every SUV in her rearview mirror made Sarah's stomach tighten. She half expected to be run off the road. But she pushed through, her grip tight on the wheel until the courthouse steps rose ahead. Inside Judge Martinez's chambers, Sarah laid it all out. Maps. Shell corporations. HOA violations twisted into leverage. And finally, she pressed play on the recording. The judge sat back, face carved from stone. She didn't interrupt, didn't blink, until Karen's voice finished with that cruel laugh. When silence settled, Martinez folded her hands. "Mrs. Henderson, this is serious." Sarah nodded. "They won't stop. They've already tried violence. You've seen these mercenaries skulking around town." Martinez's jaw tightened. "I've had suspicions about the Pollsons for years. But this," she tapped the satchel, "this is a fuse. The right spark, and it burns them." Sarah exhaled. For the first time in weeks, she felt the weight shift. "Then we have a chance?" The judge gave her a grim smile. "A chance. But understand, once this moves forward, they'll know it was you." Sarah thought of Jack, waiting at the ranch. She straightened. "Let them know." Back at the ranch, Jack was oiling the rifle when the phone rang. He answered, but no voice came. Just static, then a slow, deliberate whisper. "You should have sold when you had the chance." Click. Jack lowered the receiver, his face a mask of stone. Sarah pulled into the driveway minutes later, dust rising behind her car. Jack met her halfway. One look at her face, and he knew she'd lit the fuse. "They're not just coming," he said quietly, scanning the tree line. "They're coming tonight." Sarah's chin lifted, no fear left. "Then let's be ready." The valley slept under a silver moon, but the Henderson ranch did not. Jack moved through the house like a ghost, checking locks, sliding fresh shells into the shotgun, laying a pistol by the window. Sarah lit lanterns in the barn and left them burning, a decoy glow, just bright enough to lure eyes. They weren't paranoid. They were prepared. At 1:13 a.m., the first sound came. Tires crunching gravel. Engines cut. Silence followed. Jack crouched at the front window, night vision binoculars pressed to his eyes. 3 SUVs sat on the road, lights off. Men spilled into the field like shadows, rifles slung, moving in a fan. Professional. Mercs, Jack whispered. They're here. Sarah stood at his shoulder, her breath steady. She wasn't just a lawyer tonight. She was a soldier's wife. Where do you want me? She asked. Jack handed her the radio. North Barn. Stay low. If they breach, call out. And Sarah, he met her eyes, if they push too far, you shoot. Her nod was all steel. The first breach came quick. 2 men cut the fence line, creeping toward the porch. Jack slipped onto the roof, rifle steady. He drew in one long breath and squeezed. The first merc dropped without a sound. The second dove for cover, firing blindly into the night. Muzzle flashes tore across the dark. Jack rolled off the roof, landing in the dirt with the grace of old training. He moved fast, circling, firing short, controlled bursts. He wasn't fighting to kill. He was fighting to delay. To send a message. From the barn, Sarah's voice crackled over the radio. 2 at the north fence. They've got bolt cutters. Stay put, Jack answered, sprinting low through the grass. He hit the flank hard, a shadow rising behind the mercs. A buttstock cracked skull. A chokehold dropped the second. Both men lay still in the dirt. But the assault wasn't stopping. More were coming. Sarah's shotgun thundered once, echoing through the valley. Jack froze for half a second, then relief. She held her ground. Lights flicked on across the valley. Neighbors waking. Dogs barking. The chaos was spreading. Exactly what Jack wanted. Make it loud, he growled into the radio. Let the whole county hear. By 2 a.m., the fight turned. The mercs regrouped near their SUVs, shouts carrying across the field. They hadn't expected resistance this sharp. A voice rose above the chaos. Karen Pollson herself, standing at the roadside, face pale in the moonlight. You can't stop this, Jack. You're one man against a machine. Jack stood at the fence line, rifle in hand, chest heaving. Then you'd better send a bigger machine, he called back. Her face twisted, but she gave the signal. The SUVs peeled out, retreating into the dark. When silence finally fell, Sarah stumbled from the barn, hair wild, shotgun still smoking. Jack caught her by the arm. You did good, he said softly. She exhaled, half a laugh, half a sob. They'll be back. Jack looked toward the horizon, where the faintest hint of dawn touched the sky. Yeah, he muttered. But next time, we won't just defend. We strike. Morning sunlight spilled across the Henderson ranch, but it brought no peace. The house was scarred with bullet holes, the ground littered with shell casings. The smell of gunpowder clung to the air. Sarah patched a cut on Jack's arm, her hands shaking just slightly. We can't hold them off forever. Next time, they'll bring twice as many. Jack pulled his arm free and stood. His face was hard stone. Then we don't wait for next time. We take the fight to them. Sarah blinked. Jack, we're talking about the Pollsons. They have money, lawyers, hired guns. They bleed like anyone else. Jack's voice was quiet but fierce. You said yourself. They're not just an HOA, they're a syndicate. And syndicates fall when you cut the supply. Sarah's lawyer's mind clicked fast. She moved to the kitchen table, where the files and maps still lay. The shell corporations. The ones funneling money into the HOA. If we hit those, we don't just hurt them, we expose them. Jack studied the papers. He wasn't a man of numbers, but he knew targets when he saw them. That night, Jack drove alone into town. The old Ford rumbled quiet, its headlights off as he parked in the shadows across from a warehouse on the industrial edge of Springdale. Through binoculars, he saw them, the mercs who'd attacked the ranch. Cigarettes glowing in the dark, rifles slung, guarding the door. A Pollson black sight, plain as day. Jack checked his watch. Midnight. He slipped into the alley, moving like he had in foreign deserts years ago. Silent, patient, a predator. The knife in his hand flashed once, then a guard crumpled into the dirt. Another fell just as fast. No wasted motion. No sound. Inside, the warehouse buzzed with activity. Stacks of crates lined the walls, not farm equipment, but weapons. Ammunition. Ledgers stamped with Pollson Shell Company logos. The HOA wasn't just laundering money. They were stockpiling an arsenal. Jack's eyes narrowed. Got you. He pulled a small camera from his jacket, snapping photo after photo. Then, moving fast, he planted a tiny GPS tracker beneath one crate. A voice boomed from the far side. Thought you'd come sniffing around, Henderson. Jack froze. From the shadows, a tall man stepped forward, the mercenary leader, face scarred, eyes cold. You put 2 of my men in the ground last night. That's gonna cost you. Jack tightened his grip on the rifle. You should have stayed out of my valley. Gunfire erupted. The warehouse exploded into chaos. Jack dove behind crates, bullets sparking off metal. He fired back, methodical, every shot pushing him closer to the exit. By the time he hit the door, sirens wailed in the distance. Not Pollson reinforcements. Police. Judge Martinez had come through. Jack slid into the night, blood pounding, as red and blue lights lit up the warehouse. At the ranch, Sarah sat by the radio. When Jack's voice finally crackled through, she exhaled in relief. Got the proof, he said. Got their supply lines too. Sarah closed her eyes, strength surging back. Then tomorrow, we take this to court. Jack's voice was steady, calm, unshakable. Tomorrow, we end this. The courthouse buzzed like a hive the morning of the hearing. News vans lined the street, cameras flashing as Jack and Sarah walked up the steps. Jack wore his old, scuffed boots. Sarah carried a binder thicker than a Bible. Are you ready? She asked, her voice low. Jack glanced at the crowd, the reporters, the police escorts circling them. He'd faced ambushes, firefights, and mercenaries in the dead of night, but this, walking into the lion's den, felt heavier. I'm ready, he said simply. Inside, Judge Martinez presided from the bench, her gavel striking sharp. This court will hear the case of Henderson versus Pollson Homeowners Association. Karen Pollson sat at the defense table, pearls at her throat, lips curled in a smug smile. Her lawyers, 3 men in $1,000 suits, stacked files high. Sarah rose first. Her voice carried like steel wrapped in silk. This is not about property lines. This is about power. The Pollson family has used an HOA as cover for fraud, racketeering, and violence. And we have the proof. She opened the binder. Photos of crates. Ledgers. Wire transfers. Even the GPS tracker Jack had planted, now linked to raids across 3 warehouses. The courtroom rippled with gasps. Cameras clicked like machine guns. Karen's lawyers objected, scrambled, waved papers, but Martinez shut them down with one glare. When it was Karen's turn, she stood, venom in her voice. This is a smear campaign. A war hero and a failed lawyer trying to drag down a family that built this valley. None of this proves I ordered anything. Jack rose from his seat. His voice cut the silence. Tell that to the mercs you sent to my home. Karen's mask slipped. Her smile faltered, just a flicker, but enough. Reporters caught it. Jurors noticed. The empire cracked. By noon, the ruling was clear. The court finds the Pollson HOA guilty of fraud, conspiracy, and abuse of power, Judge Martinez declared, her gavel slamming down. Assets are frozen. Leadership dissolved. Federal charges recommended. Cheers erupted outside. Reporters swarmed. For the first time in years, Springdale Valley breathed free air. But Karen Pollson wasn't finished. As the crowd spilled onto the courthouse steps, a black SUV screeched around the corner. A window rolled down. A rifle barrel gleamed. Jack's instincts kicked in. Down, he roared, throwing himself over Sarah as gunfire tore through the crowd. People screamed, scattering. Jack drew his pistol in one clean motion, sights locking. He fired twice, the shooter slumped, the rifle clattering to the pavement. Police swarmed the vehicle. Karen Pollson was dragged out, wild-eyed, screaming curses that echoed across the square. Later, as dusk settled, Jack and Sarah sat on the ranch porch. The valley was quiet. No headlights, no shadows, no threats. Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder. "It's over." Jack stared out at the land he nearly lost, the land he defended with everything he had. "No," he said softly. "It's just beginning. Now we rebuild." The cicadas sang in the distance. For the first time in years, the night felt safe.